We are actually in the middle of a war right now, but it's not one you can see. There are no front lines, no trenches, no tanks. Instead, this is an invisible, cognitive war, and it's being waged directly on your mind. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're looking at a global briefing called the Weaponization of Presence. And I have to tell you, our sources today reveal a deeply concerning, incredibly urgent reality. We're looking at a global system where entertainment, politics, advertising, and warfare have completely fused together. This is all about how states and powerful organizations are actively dismantling our cognitive autonomy. It's dark, it's serious, and it is absolutely crucial that we explore and understand this together.
To really wrap our heads around this dystopian reality, we have to anchor it in history. Just consider this 1953 quote from President Dwight D. Eisenhower. He explicitly stated that the hand of government must be, quote, carefully concealed and funneled through private entertainment. So this proves that covert psychological operations through media, they aren't some brand new internet phenomenon. They are a foundational state tactic. The blueprint was drawn decades ago. We are just living in its most advanced, algorithmically supercharged phase.
Here is the roadmap for today's Explainer. We'll start with the epistemic battlefield, then move to entertainment as warfare, architectures of state influence, AI and synthetic reality, governing through emotion, and finally, reclaiming information sovereignty.
All right, Section 1, the epistemic battlefield, redefining modern conflict.
To start off, we have to completely redefine how we view modern conflict. Physical territory is no longer the primary objective. Perception is the new territory. So the absolute key here is understanding something called epistemic power. Drawing on the academic theory of Michel Foucault, this is all about regimes of truth. You see, epistemic power isn't just about censoring information. It's the structural organization of what a society even deems to be credible or visible in the first place. Dominant actors are moving way beyond physical coercion to organize knowledge itself. They're literally turning information flows into a form of governance, determining what you care about, what you fear, and ultimately, what you believe to be true.
And this breakdown brilliantly illustrates the shift. On one side, we have traditional kinetic warfare, so physical coercion, traditional battlefields, physical violence. But on the other side, we have cognitive warfare. This is an entirely invisible battlefield. The weapons used here are narrative engineering, algorithmic amplification, and the intentional disruption of social meaning. In cognitive warfare, the target is your own mind. And the scariest part? You might not even realize you're under attack.
Section 2. Entertainment as Warfare. The Military Entertainment Complex.
This is where the seemingly harmless facade of play and gaming gets systematically repurposed as an architecture for modern soldiering. Just look at how this has evolved. Back in 1943, the OSS, which was a precursor to the CIA, established a doctrine using cinema as propaganda. Then we have Eisenhower's 1953 mandate. Jump forward to 2002 and the U.S. military releases America's Army, which was a completely sanitized, state-funded online shooter game explicitly used for recruitment. By 2018, facing recruitment shortfalls, they launched the official U.S. Army esports team on Twitch. So yes, the military evolved from vetting Hollywood scripts to playing video games in the exact digital spaces where young people go to unwind.
Now this brings us to some vital research from the Total Peace Institute. They advocate for counter-recruiting, pointing out just how vulnerable youth are in these digital spaces. A massive controversy actually erupted when journalist Jordan Ull was banned from the U.S. Army's Twitch channel simply for asking about war crimes in the chat. The military was using these platforms to cultivate relatable spaces while simultaneously censoring criticism of state violence. This even led U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to propose an amendment to ban military recruitment of minors on gaming streams. The amendment failed, which unfortunately left these digital communities largely unprotected.
But it's definitely not just the U.S. Let's look at how this builds globally. Russia's state-backed Internet Development Institute poured 2.5 billion rubles into domestic propaganda games like Sparta to glorify private military companies. And they actively use realistic military simulation games like Arma 3 to recruit fighters for conflicts in Africa and Ukraine. On the extremist side, groups like ISIS have exploited modular game design, modifying incredibly popular games like Grand Theft Auto to bypass content moderation and broadcast jihadist messaging. They are literally turning the mechanics of play into weapons of radicalization.
Section 3. Architectures of State Influence. Hezbollah and the Suppression of Dissent.
This brings us to how state apparatuses construct elaborate architectures to manage global narratives. Our sources detail the Israeli state strategy known as Hasbara, which translates to explaining. According to the reports, Israel allocated $145 million to a digital outreach initiative called Project 545. This involves hiring firms like Clocktower X LLC for generative engine optimization. Essentially, that means seeding the web with curated narratives to ensure AI models like ChatGPT prioritize state-aligned responses. The sources also cite investigations into the IDF fact-check unit, which reportedly used covert social media accounts presented as independent news organizations to manipulate international discourse and counter allegations regarding state actions.
Domestically within the U.S., the sources outline a blueprint called Project Esther, authored by the Heritage Foundation. This document explicitly seeks to dismantle pro-Palestine advocacy and civil dissent organizations within a tight 12 to 24-month timeline. The strategy detailed in the project involves utilizing counterterrorism legislation, the Foreign Agents Registration Act, and RICO racketeering laws against civil society groups. The sources describe this as a comprehensive initiative to weaponize the legal system to suppress domestic criticism of foreign policy, all under the stated goal of combating anti-Semitism.
Section 4. AI and Synthetic Reality, Bot Networks, and the Liar's Dividend. So this brings us to the technological accelerant of this cognitive warfare. 1,600%. That is the staggering growth rate in web fraud since just 2021. Generative AI makes mass deception incredibly cheap and almost instant. We are witnessing the total erosion of the seeing is believing standard. And this creates what researchers call the liar's dividend. It's an environment where the sheer volume of deepfakes allows any powerful actor to simply dismiss genuine, real evidence of wrongdoing by claiming, oh, it's just AI generated.
The synthetic threat landscape is honestly vast. As of August 2025, leading chatbots had a 35% hallucination rate, and there are over 2,000 completely AI-generated news sites operating with zero human oversight. But most chillingly, leaked documents in our sources reveal a Beijing-based firm called Galaxy that engineered a smart propaganda system. This system actually used an army of state-sponsored AI personas and LLM grooming to build deep psychological profiles of targets, including 117 members of the U.S. Congress. These AI bots adapt dynamically, they win trust globally, and they saturate search results so that their fabricated realities become the widely accepted truth.
To really grasp the real-world impact of this, look at the aftermath of the Pahalgam terror attack in Kashmir in April 2025. In the chaotic hours following the tragedy, social media was absolutely flooded with AI-constructed footage and deepfake videos of military officials claiming false flag operations. They even used aestheticized Ghibli-style illustrations of the violence specifically to drive algorithmic engagement. This synthetic alternate reality was so pervasive and confusing that it actually delayed official intervention on the ground. The informational domain itself quite literally became a lethal battle space.
Section 5. Governing through Emotion, Effective Economies, and Algorithmic Control.
So how exactly are these massive influence campaigns delivered so effectively? Well, they rely on digital platforms optimized to manipulate human affect and tribalism. Academic Shoshana Zuboff warns us about surveillance capitalism, noting that information is no longer just a commodity, it's a political instrument of control. Along with Peter W. Singer's concept of like war, the expert consensus is abundantly clear. These social platforms are engineered for emotional contagion. They absolutely do not prioritize truth, they prioritize outrage, because at the end of the day, you are being farmed for your emotional reactions.
And there is a massive, massive financial incentive behind this algorithmic emotional control. Take a look at the disinformation economy. Through automated, programmatic advertising technology, major brands are inadvertently redirecting huge amounts of money to fake news websites. We're talking $2.4 billion in the US alone and nearly $6 billion worldwide. To put that into perspective, major, trusted brands are inadvertently paying to fund the very actors executing this cognitive war against all of us.
Section 6. Reclaiming Information Sovereignty, Systemic Control, and the Future.
So, what do? How can open societies build resilience against this? The sources present some very concrete policy solutions. First, we need robust regulatory frameworks, starting with a tiered risk classification for AI. Second, and this is absolutely crucial, platform liability for embedded AI tools. For example, when X's embedded Grok AI was used to generate harmful fake images, regulators pushed hard to strip X of its safe harbor immunity, arguing that by embedding the AI, the platform is acting as a manufacturer, not just a passive conduit. And third, we need mandatory point-of-upload watermarking, so synthetic content can be identified the second it hits the web, before it spreads like wildfire.
Ultimately, we have to completely rethink the digital commons. We need to shift our focus away from these endless debates about individual content moderation and start heavily scrutinizing the actual infrastructures of perception. Information warfare isn't just some technological glitch. It is a direct, systemic threat to democratic resilience and our ideological sovereignty.
As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to reflect on as you go about your day and scroll through your own feeds. We've seen how entertainment, AI, and state power have fused into this massive machine designed to bypass your rational defenses. So I have to ask you, if perception is the new territory of war, who occupies your mind?